Here I present the first part of my software for analyzing the field of artworks using AI, which serves a dual purpose. First, it is a tool for working with artworks. And on the other hand, what interests me is, of course, the analysis we can conduct on the algorithmic sensitivity of AIs, particularly the differences between models, the various forms of reduction, and thus the methods employed by these models. In application, we first have the different models. There's the OpenAI clip base large and base 16, the Lion clip model B32, L14 and H14. And there are specialized models for art analysis, such as EVA clip 8B and 18B, which are truly large models that can require up to 40 gigabytes of RAM to run. Of course, other models can be added, but they must be compatible with Hugging Face's transformer framework for this code. To begin, we'll use the basic analysis from OpenAI. After loading the model, we load a folder containing over 200 unorganized artworks. In the terminal, we can observe how quickly the images are processed since we're using a base-level KIP model, which is very fast. The result is a 2D projection of the latent space of the 218 artworks. By default, I've included a semantic gradient in a code: abstract, inorganic, human, organic. This distinction is clearly visible through the colored circles surrounding the images. Abstract, inorganic appears here in shades of blue. These are mostly landscapes, such as those by the futurist Russolo or this one by Hopper. The further we move up toward the red gradient, the more the image semantics align with the organic body. For instance, works by Jean Rustin, or here, photographs by Larry Clark. A gap has indeed been formed in the vector field between these two distant points in the latent space. In a later video, I will show a series of analyses focused on these gaps, which reflect the algorithmic sensitivity. Since this is a general presentation, I won't go into detail. Each axis of vectorial tension can be found here, and these axes are recalculated every time a new image is introduced. Here are the reduction methods: TSNE, UMAP, PCA, MDS, isomap, spectral embedding, and trimap. To better understand what happens with these dimensionality reduction methods, I've included documentation explaining the logic behind algorithmic reduction. We will study and visualize these methods in an upcoming video. In this latent space, of course, you can zoom in and move around. For the representation of this space, instead of leaving it as an abstract plot, each point is shown directly as a thumbnail of the image. This allows us, as seen here with the TSN reduction, to clearly perceive the graphic and semantic clustering. This makes it very easy to immediately see how the models organize the space. What will interest me in an upcoming video, of course, is the comparative study of different models and the various forms of algorithmic sensitivity that can emerge in the construction of these latent spaces, depending on the categories involved. These semantic tension axes, I've included some by default here, but we can create as many as we like. For example, in this case, we introduce a category, medium, which highlights the difference between painting, which tends to appear in dark blues, and photography, which tends to shift toward reds. This creates a new form of marker differentiation based on these two vectors.
As we can see here, elements related to photography move toward the red, while painting shifts toward the blue. However, within this tension analysis, certain difficulties do arise. So, while artists like Belmer or Larry Clark are clearly identified as photography, there are moments where ambiguity arises. At times, certain plastic forms, and this relates directly to algorithmic sensitivity, fall into zones of vectorial uncertainty. This is clearly reflected in the classification, particularly, for instance, with black and white images, which the model tends to associate more easily with photography than with painting. What will be interesting to observe is the difference between various models and their distinct forms of algorithmic reduction sensitivity, in the sense that they do not share the same uncertainties or semantic relationships. We can also perform automated clustering, meaning automatic classifications. For instance, here, the standard k-means algorithm proposes 8 cluster categories for this latent space field, which is the optimal number, though it can be adjusted for finer analysis. When we compute the clusters, we can clearly see the distributions and the links being formed within the space. Here, we have the 10 clusters that were generated. Each one is assigned a distinct color, allowing us to clearly explore how the clusters were created and analyzed. New feature, advanced analysis. This part of the software includes different types of analysis. First, zones of attention. I've defined two types, one corresponding to AI attention and the other to human attention as interpreted by the AI. AI attention tends to focus on geometric patterns or distinctive textures. In contrast, human attention, as modeled by the AI, tends to prioritize faces and eyes, movement and vivid colors, vanishing points and leading lines, or areas with high contrast in brightness. Of course, this distinction needs to be critically examined. Other analysis functions include entropy analysis, distinguishing between highly detailed complex areas and simpler flat ones, as well as pattern and symmetry analysis. Here, we observe both vertical and horizontal symmetry. If we look at the summary reports, we find all of this information, along with others, such as the detected concepts. Additional categories can be defined in the code. These are the axes introduced at the start when the Python script is launched. Pattern and symmetry analyses are shown here. Horizontal, vertical, and detected geometric shapes. There's also analysis of the rule of thirds, the phi grid, and the golden spiral, which enables correspondence with the golden ratio and spatial division according to the Fibonacci sequence. All of these analyses and their associated data can be saved. Finally, there is the possibility to generate mosaics based on vectorial tensions. Here, we're looking at the semantic gap between photography and painting. You can select a subset of images and save the results into new folders in order to create thematic or semantic collections. This was a first very quick presentation of what this software can do and of the two main axes that interest us. On the one hand, the tool itself, and on the other, the question of algorithmic sensitivity, which lies both in the models and in the reduction methods. In the next video, we'll explore several techniques that have been implemented to grasp how the latent space is constructed, such as zones of semantic collapse during analysis or areas of hesitation or anxiety in the model.